Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin, and let's talk football.
All right, so this is our Monday Night Football reaction, and I'm going to start with worst ever because there's a lot more in the worst ever category. It seems like there's always more in the worst ever. Now,
With you,
as you can see, the Eagles helmet is upside down. They do not deserve to be right side up for this pod. Actually, for this whole week, they're staying upside down. So my very first worst ever note is the first 58 and a half minutes of this game was almost unwatchable. It was kind of offense wasn't doing much. The run game would seem to catch on both sides, and then it would get stuffed, then it would catch, then it would get stuffed. Because by the end, the box score wasn't that impressive on either run game. I guess Hurts ran enough to make their box score look a little bit better on the Eagles. But every time I looked up, Algier was having a good run or Bijan Robinson was having a good run. And then when you look at the box score, you're like, oh, sort of pedestrian, no 100-yard rusher. The two of them put together maybe got 145 or something. And just, in the theme of lousy offenses with the NFL, this just is another game that looked like nobody was going to make it to 20 points. And that almost held until the end. So it was just sort of blah. It was just, I mean, I watched it to watch it, but I didn't find it compelling compared to some of the other games this week. And it just sort of fit in with this, not much is going on here game.
Interesting. So I had a different reaction. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. Okay. I thought it was played well. You're right. There wasn't that much offense. And I think both defenses played well, but I thought it was executed well. Like and you described it, like the running game looked like it was working for both teams sometimes, and then sometimes the defense stopped it, which I think is sort of, I don't want to say it's what's supposed to happen, but like when you have a good defense, that's what it's going to look like. And I thought Robinson looked amazing. I thought that he was had a really good game and was a really dynamic runner. And so I enjoyed watching that. I had in my notes, I had the CJ Gardner had game saving tackle and the stop and fourth down. And then I had to cross that out later because then Atlanta came back to win. So that was, I can't believe that. I know you had your reaction show earlier, but on my list my note that I had underlined a couple of times was how mad is Barbin going to be at the prevent defense? Because that was so unbelievably apparent how the defense was stopping them the whole game, and then they switched to that because that's apparently what you're supposed to do, and it allowed them to move down in such a short period of time, so I just it's unbelievable that that's the go-to defense in that case.
Brutal. That's end of game play calling is the next in my worst ever. The soft defense that whatever you want to call it, prevents you from winning. I do not get, unless it's statistically more likely to stop people from winning the game. I have no idea. Maybe this is changing. This is fundamentally going to change with the kickoff, where now the default is a touchback's on the 30. I know it's only 5 yards, but maybe that's going to change. Watching the KC game, where the playoff game where Mahomes came back in 13 seconds against the Bills, just makes me think, at what point are coaches going to realize a good quarterback's going to tear you apart with this prevent garbage? And so my note here is, this is on both coaching staffs. So obviously the Eagles went to this prevent soft shell thing that does nothing. Kirk Cousins is a good enough quarterback to pick that thing apart. And they went down the field so fast, they actually left too much time on the clock. And they had no time. And they had no timeouts. Eagles fans, I get it. You must be beside yourself. I don't know if this is an indictment on Sirianni and the defensive coordinator you guys have, or if this is just standard NFL practice, but that was awful. I mean, I just described it as the Eagles defense just barfed all over itself. And I had an Eagles fan write in a pretty insightful post, and they pointed out that the Eagles defense was good all game. And you're right. I had my notes, game-saving tackle when he popped Robinson in the hole. That's as good of a play as you'll ever get. It was like, okay, here we go. The Eagles are playing smash mouth football. That is the exclamation point on an awesome like rock fight of a game. You know, Barkley had a workman-like 100 yards, like all of that stuff. This just looked like a team that's going to grind other teams into a pulp. And Hurts had a good running game. We'll get to Hurts in a second. And then the defense just decides to, yeah, go ahead, like just play the doormat defense. And I don't know if only good, accurate quarterbacks who've got some experience in the pocket are the ones that'll rip that thing apart. But it was laughably bad. There was zero resistance, and they went the length of the field in less than a minute. And it was, I mean, I hate that defense so much, especially when you spend the whole game holding them down, and now all of a sudden you just let them walk all over you. It makes me wonder. I don't know. It makes me wonder why the coaches that call that don't they understand that when it's called against them, they just march right down the field? I don't know. It's Eagles fans. I feel for you. That was ugly as hell. And I don't necessarily think it's your coaching staff exclusively. It seems like all NFL coaches do this, and it is infuriating to watch. Now, last thing, I don't want to take anything away from the Falcons. The door was open, but they had to walk through it, and Cousins walked right through it. So they had to take advantage. But man, was it just an Ole, help yourself down the field?
No, and the defense, what makes it so jarring is the defense looked so good, like all game. It was anything was really difficult. They held Atlanta to 3 field goals, like after like 3 quarters. And it was and then the difference for Cousins to play quarterback and then to come out there, and it must have looked like everyone was so wide open compared to the previous 3 quarters, because with that defense, it looks so different. And the other thing that was frustrating is that it's the prevent defense is trying to stop them from going deep and from getting out of bounds. And what was crazy is that it felt like it did neither. Like they were still got to the sideline and they were still able to complete huge chunks of yards. So it's fascinating that's the standard. That's the defense you're supposed to do at the end to win. So
it's just shocking that that's the standard. We see it too often, and I mean, I hate it. I just hate it.
And hats off to Kirk Cousins, okay? Because there was a lot of people, including the person I'm looking at right now, that thought that Michael Penix is a really good option, and sort of what were they going to be doing this year? But man, did Kirk Cousins sort of solidify the starter as as it is right now, I feel like.
Yeah, Ryan Clark had a good post-game comment, which stole my thunder, and it just saved Kirk Cousins' season, because if they went back to Atlanta 0-2 with that kind of performance until the drive, he kind of just looks ordinary. It's something more exciting, anything. We're talking about a team that struggled to score 2 or 3 touchdowns in 2 games. It would have been a totally different story. Instead, it's already going to be one of the best game-winning drives of the season. There's nothing could possibly be much better than that. And so that it's got to make Atlanta Falcons fans feel good about your quarterback room, because that was awesome. And now, I don't know, like we said last week or the week before, when you got 2 quarterbacks in Atlanta, you got 2 quarterbacks. So
no, and that was another good point that you made about they had no timeouts and they drove the field so fast. It was too fast. They left too much time that the Eagles had a chance there at the end, which is crazy to think they could cover that much distance in that short period of time. No, and that was another good point about they would have been 0-2 and playing Kansas City next week, right? And so that then you would be hard pressed not to, like, you know what, we're just going to roll with the rookie, give Penix some touches this year, but always throwing a rookie quarterback into start on a team that might not be great isn't good, and then you'll have to listen to the next episode to hear the rest of that one.
Right. Okay. So I think we can wrap this one up. My last item was Philly fans. You guys are tough. Booing your team on the first series 3 and out. I get it. You hold them to a high standard, but I had a note here saying, "Wish Philly fans are tough." And then I got, there was a couple other things like going for it on 4th down and leaving points on the board. When it's 0-0, take the points. I mean, I get it. After the fact, you see how tight this game was. Every point mattered. But when you don't know how the game's going to go, take the points. Like, you don't have to risk that at that point. And then the other major error, they could have iced the game if Barkley caught that out pass.
Yes. Yeah. That's a big deal. That was a real change there. I'm with you with the going on the fourth down. It's the, that's why it's such a hard job to be an NFL coach, because if they made it, it looks like a genius move, and they absolutely could have done it, right? So, but hindsight's always 20/20, and in hindsight, they should have taken the points because that was a really well contested game.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, I think that's good for the Monday night reaction. So good for the Falcons and Eagles fans. We feel for you.